Cyber Reapers. Hello, Cyber Reapers. So, tonight, or today, wherever you are, I would like to talk about a book. So, this one enthralled me. So much. Alright. There's a lot to talk about with this book. I will do my best to minimize the amount of names and stuff as I can so that it's not super confusing. But this book really has a lot in it, and the way it's told is a little, it can be a little confusing if you're not paying attention. So, just giving you a heads up warning about that now, because I am traditionally quite rambly, even about books that are fairly, straightforward to talk about the plot. So, what is this book, okay? This book is called Off With Their Heads by Zoe Hana Mikuta. Now, if Off With Their Heads starts ringing some bells reminding you of Alice in Wonderland, that is because this story is heavily inspired by it. I would say, you could call it a retelling, but I think it's got so much of its own plot that, you could call it a retelling, but it's very unique standing on its own. The Alice in Wonderland elements are kind of, sort of more there, I feel like, as fun little Easter egg kind of feeling things, where you go, oh, that's cool that that's there, and it gives you a framework a little bit of, oh, okay, so maybe this is where it's going. And, it doesn't give away anything necessarily, it just kind of forms this sort of pre-existing lore that this story builds a foundation on, but I don't think you need to read the original, Alice in Wonderland to understand it. So, in addition, also, I forgot to mention, not only is it an Alice in Wonderland retelling, but it's heavily Korean inspired. So, the characters, the cast, they're pretty much all Korean. They live in a world where Korean phrases are normal, and so you'll see the language and culture, like it influences the clothing and everything, so it meshes together the Alice in Wonderland elements with Korean elements as well. And on top of that, so the relationships are so messy, they're so wonderfully nuanced and well written. This is probably the best lovers to enemies I've read yet. So, I'm gonna give you a heads up warning. If you go into this book, don't expect it to be a romance. It is fantasy. So, the romance doesn't necessarily have a traditional happily ever after. And with the main two, they go from loving each other to absolutely hating each other and wanting to kill each other. The way this book shows it over time is so wonderfully done. There are, it jumps through the timeline of the story quite a bit. So, there's the main kind of storyline of the current and now, but then there are also the flashes back to the past to explain how things got to where they are. And so you get to see the unraveling of the main two, their relationship, and just themselves. So they become more and more unraveled and, well, I guess just like insane in a way of like reminding me of the Alice in Wonderland kind of insanity, or the we're all mad here kind of vibe. The storytelling as well kind of reflects this. It matches pretty well with how the characters are, the characters we're following. So even though it's third person kind of most of the time, the story is being told by a narrator. So, or there are narrator interjections. So it kind of gives it a feeling like the story is being told to you. And I quite liked that. I could see though some people finding that a little unusual, so I wanted to let you know. Yeah, I think there are many things about this story that make it very unique, to where I think if you read it, you're either in the camp of really loving it or really not liking it, and that's perfectly fine. You know, books don't necessarily vibe with everybody. They're not supposed to. They have specific audiences, so it's okay to not like a book. But yes, I think that's enough of like the introduction before I talk about the plot, right? Oh, did I mention it was sapphic? So the lovers to enemies. Yeah, this is a very queer book. So, alright, now I get into the actual plot. Our main characters. Let's start with the main two. Those two, the lovers to enemies, right? So, Isadora Alice is one of our main characters, and then Carousel Rabbit is our other main character. Now, don't let the name fool you of rabbit. They are human, or they are people. They are also witches. They have magic, very particular magic. And for the sake of not over-explaining everything about the story, I won't delve too deeply into the magic stuff, but I'll just say they're both very powerful witches, and they grew up being powerful witches, along with another, and her name was Tekka. So the three of them were kind of this, sapphic polycule. They did everything together. They were very, very close. And I won't tell you what happened to Tekka, but events happen to where Tekka becomes no longer in the picture. And, so our main two, that's, Isadora Alice and Carousel Rabbit. They're also called Ika and Caro for short. So, Ika and Caro. Things happen to where they are branded with a magical mark. And this magical mark means that they've been exiled from their walled-in city. So they've been exiled to the forests of Wonderland. Now, these forests are very dangerous because they have creatures in there that are very bloodthirsty. So, very dangerous, very dangerous. Only the most powerful witches could probably survive, maybe survive. And the way to buy your ticket out of there, and to get the magical brand removed from you, is if you collect four of the heads of the creatures. So you have to defeat 4 creatures and bring back their heads to the border. And then the Red Queen will absolve you of your mark. And the mark indicates you did a crime, by the way. I won't go too heavily into that. But the main two were accused of a crime, in a way. So, yeah, so you have to bring 4 heads to the Red Queen in order to escape the forests of Wonderland. And so at first, these two being very in love, but also being tied together by, their panic, their grief, their everything over what they just lost. And now they're in the forests of Wonderland. They don't know if they're going to survive necessarily, but they're determined to. So they work together. They're each going to get, 4 heads so that they can both buy their escape. But circumstances happen, and they betray each other. So after they betray each other, things just aren't the same. They can't mend their relationship. That was a turning point, no going back. Because after all this time in Wonderland, with all this panic and all this madness, they've changed quite a bit, and they realize, oh no, we didn't quite change together the way that we wanted to. They thought they were going to be powerful witches who, they were going to make their way out, and once they were out, they were going to stick together. But they can't even stick together in here, in Wonderland, in the forests where all, the bad monsters are. So, with pretty much irreparable damage to their relationship, they separate, go their own paths to buy their own tickets out, or, get the 4 heads each and leave. They don't see each other for years after that. By the time they next see each other, they've gone very different directions. So, after they each turned in their 4 heads after they each turned in the 4 heads of the monsters to the Red Queen, they went separate directions. And Carousel Rabbit decided to take the Red Queen's offer of being part of her court, being close with the Red Queen, because just something about the Red Queen really fascinated Caro. So, Caro decided, okay, I'm gonna stick with the Red Queen. I'm gonna protect her. I care about her. And just, she uses her powerful magic to help the Red Queen. Now, Ika, on the other hand, does not go that path, because Ika blames the Red Queen for the crime that put the 2 of them in Wonderland in the first place. And Ika just cannot forgive the Red Queen or her bloodline, the royal bloodline, for any of it. So, as a result, Ika goes on her own path, declines the Red Queen joining her court. And Ika just kind of drifts, not really feeling like a particular home anywhere. And she lives by going off and collecting bounties on these monsters, going and collecting monster heads, to make money and to continue just living, But it isn't really until the 2 of them see each other again that just this spark happens that propels so much. Because the two of them, Ika and Caro, when they next see each other, they hate each other. They absolutely hate each other. And they were determined to kill each other. But for reasons, that kind of gets delayed each time. And of course, they blame it on other things, but there's a muddled mix of emotions because they once loved each other. And to a certain extent, they have, other feelings in there, like a mix of respect and a mix of loathing and just kind of all kinds of complex emotions toward each other, to where killing each other isn't as easy as they think. Hurting each other, yes, they are plenty fine with that. But actually completely ending and severing their future of ever seeing each other again, they kind of hesitate at that. But anyway, to propel the plot forward, the two of them, when they see each other again, they have this sort of longing to see each other, even though it's not necessarily out of a place of care, at least as far as they think. So, how much do I explain further? Oh, the Red Queen, I should probably just at least explain that part. So when they next see each other again, they're completely on opposite sides of how they think of the Red Queen. Caro adores the Red Queen, and Ika despises the Red Queen. So when Ika discovers that Caro is by the Red Queen's side and probably her favorite, the Red Queen's favorite magical witch, powerful witch, Ika gets kind of mad at that. And Ika becomes determined to kill the Red Queen. Now Caro doesn't want that, so she's gonna do everything she can to stop Ika from doing that. And so that puts them at odds with each other, and that propels the whole rest of the story forward. And in the meantime, the Red Queen is very, very powerful, and she has her own ideas forward with what she wants to happen with these two, with the main two. And the Red Queen's such an interesting character. You get to see a lot with those main three, and occasionally too there's a fourth character based on the Cheshire Cat that you also get to see some of his mindset. But yeah, the events that follow, there's so many grueling events that, like, halfway through the book, I was wondering, how are they gonna end this? Because it's already gotten so hyped up, so much has happened, that I didn't know where they were, like, how they were gonna end this snowball, Now, I do think I should probably say, with regards to, like, the story structure, it very much feels like an Alice in Wonderland sort of feel. And by that I mean, you're stepping into a world and then you're stepping out of it eventually. So that is kind of the story. It's not that the story doesn't have an end, it definitely has an end. But I'll give you a heads up warning that it's not necessarily a traditional end. I feel like it's very... you can kind of imagine where it goes after. It's a little more open-ended than a traditional, than a lot of commercial stories are right now. So, just gonna let you know that. It is very, like, a lot of stuff happens. It's very dreamlike, even in the way it's told, and how the characters talk to themselves and each other. It's very much embodying the "we're all mad here" statement, which I found really neat. I loved the way this story was told, even with, like, the jumping timeline, which you could... I didn't really pay attention to the dates. I actually paid attention to one of the other things in the chapter headings that told me what time period it was. Because at each of the chapter headings, it says, the chapter number, it also says the date, but it also says the amount of monsters that are left. And so I kept track of the time jumps by looking at how many monsters were left. Because usually that was enough to get me kind of, at least at first, to understand the time jumps. But after reading a few chapters, it got to the point where... But after reading a few chapters, it got to the point where I understood where time period it was without looking at the chapter headings. Just looking at the events, I was able to tell well enough. So I love with how the characters each are. I wouldn't call anyone necessarily the main hero or the main villain of the story. They all just kind of behave in ways that they just serve their own self-interests most of the time without really thinking about the morality of what they do. And I found that kind of refreshing, actually. I really was able to dive into the story and go, yeah, I understand these characters have pretty straightforward ideas of what they think they want. And then layer by layer, you kind of figure out, oh, they're kind of lying to themselves about a lot of things. And they do that to survive or to thrive in the world that they're in. But it's so neat to see how they interact because of it. And I think it's especially so with how they show their care for each other or their love. And I'm not just talking about the main two, but how each of the characters show affection for other characters is so interesting. You get to know the characters so well that things that don't maybe for most people mean affection or care, you start to notice, oh, that means affection or care for these characters. And so it can be really unexpectedly sweet how vulnerable some of these characters can be sometimes. And I think I really cling to those moments because of the loathing that was everywhere else in all the other moments of interaction, especially between the main two. Yeah, the story hits hard with reminding you what could have been if these two didn't go on the paths that they went on. It is very much a lovers to enemies story, and it does not hold back. Yeah. At least in exploring the nuance of it. And I also appreciated how different types of relationships were shown. Not just with... Well, I mean, there's the romantic relationships where there are different ways that the characters would interact. Different types of sexual relationships were depicted, different types of romantic relationships, definitely queer relationships, the main two being sapphic, and what else? I think there was a lot of neat exploration of affection and love in ways that are hard to define, or hard to label, and I really appreciated that. I think especially between Caro and the Red Queen, where they have this weird sort of affectionate bond with each other. It's not exactly romantic love, it's not exactly sisterly love, it's something some interesting stitched together amalgamation. Yeah, I loved the magic in the story, I loved the world building, I loved the Korean and Alice in Wonderland elements, I loved the enemies to lovers, I loved so much about this book. I think the messy characters and messy relationships are the absolute heart of the story. Tying all of that together in such a way that gives it so much meaning. And it's so beautiful. I think this story has a very distinct narration style. And yeah, just all of it together created such an interesting dreamlike experience for me, where I cared so much about these characters, and then just eventually I had to let them go, and just kind of trust that the ending, after the ending, that they would do kind of what I expect them to do based on how well I know them now. Yeah. So these characters. I don't even know necessarily who my favorite is. Actually, no, I think I would pick Carousel Rabbit. Just because she's a mix of like very flighty in demeanor and also callous, cruel, always wearing a grin, powerful, goofy, eccentric, in a way that just feels very fun to me. And of course, all the characters are fun in different ways, but I think Carousel Rabbit in particular just really struck me as, she's so fun. Now, of course, I probably would not want to interact with her in real life, but reading about her, absolutely great. Absolutely. So, I think that's about all that I can say without diving too deeply into all the story. Yeah. So, I hope that sounds interesting. Like I said, though, I could see this book going, like, either way. With me recommending it, I could see someone going, oh no, this absolutely is not for me, or oh my gosh, this is so for me. And I'm not sure there's much of an in-between because of how particular it is. But I hope that if you choose to pick up the book, that it leans toward, the oh my gosh, this is so cool. But if not, it's still awesome that you decided to pick up a book, like that's super cool in of itself. So, yeah. I appreciate you listening and you being here, especially because I've been working hard to try to get these videos to stay, uploading and maintaining every Friday. Even with my ankle sprain, it's been healing very nicely though. In fact, like I'm walking, I'm getting around really well. It's just got a little bit of rehabilitation to do. But I'm really happy that even with the injury that I was still able to like set up and do all of the things. So I really appreciate you being here with me through all this. Yeah. Okay. So, again, thank you for listening. You are an awesome listener. And I hope that wherever you go next, whatever you do next, that it is fun and or relaxing and or worthwhile to you.